Okay.
Hello and welcome everybody to How to Write a Book in 40 Hours. This is Getrude Matshe here in Wellington, New Zealand. And I am here with a wonderful, wonderful lady that I met a few years ago. Karen, welcome. I put out this call for everybody to connect with me this morning, especially all the new people to the group who want to find out more about how to write a book in 40 hours. And at any point during this webinar, you can stop me. If you click on the link, you just come into the room. Let me know that you want to ask a question, maybe by typing in the chat on the Zoom chat window, or just saying, Getrude, I have a question, and I'll stop and I'll further explain. So let me tell you a little bit about how to write a book in 40 hours and how I came upon this process. My first book took me 18 years to write. It was a journal that I eventually turned into my first memoir. So I had a lot of bits and pieces everywhere as I traveled around the world when I was studying overseas, and ended up going back to Zimbabwe, where I'm from, living in South Africa, then eventually moving to Wellington, New Zealand, which is where I live now. And I write a lot of poetry, so the book includes a lot of poetry that was inspired by the memoir and my experiences. And I eventually put it all together. It took me about 3 to 4 months to get it done. My second book is the one that gave me this idea on how to produce content really fast and how to write a book in 40 hours. So I work as a change agent for organizations. If a company needs somebody to come in and help their staff, I help with staff morale, personal development, and I run training sessions for big corporates. And it was when the two major banks in New Zealand had merged. We have ANZ and National Bank in New Zealand. They merged and they were having problems with staff morale here in Wellington. And they had 600 people in a building who were not getting on. And they called me in and said, Gertrude, can you come in and help? So I have a human resources degree. I majored in industrial psychology and management. And I normally do a lot of my facilitation and work through storytelling. I just share my life stories. And out of those stories, I wrap the lesson or the gift that I'm trying to communicate. So storytelling is really powerful in that sense. So I went into this bank and I pulled out 10 stories of my major life challenges, the things that have challenged me the most. And it was fascinating because I got people to walk into this boardroom. They were coming in 100, 120 at a time. And I did the same presentation 6 times that day until I finished talking to all 600 people. And before they sat down, I gave them a feedback form. And I encouraged them to write down any questions that came up for them as I was speaking, and not to wait until the end. And the presentation was called, It's Not About What Happens That Matters. And as I was going into this boardroom, I thought, gosh, that's a catchy title for a book. I wonder if I can turn this material into a book. And that's what I did. At the end of my feedback form, I said, the book is going to be $35. It's going to be out in 30 days. Would you like a copy, and would you like to pre-order? Tick here. By the end of that day, I had pre-sold 485 copies of a book that did not exist. And that's what inspired me to get it done really quickly and really fast. I remember coming home, half of the people paid cash on the spot. And I went through the feedback forms to see where the gaps in my presentation were, the questions that were coming up for people. Some of them were just comments, things that really resonated, that hit home. People made a note of that as well. So I got my personal assistant to type up all the questions into an Excel spreadsheet. And she collated the common thread of questions, and those became the chapters to the book. And I got out my dictaphone and I recorded myself answering the questions. And it was fascinating how I got the content out of my head and on paper within the first 20 hours. So we typed up all of the audio that I had created, and then I sat back and read through it and rewrote it. I brought in my editors, and literally in 40 hours, that book was on Amazon and Kindle. So that's how this process was created. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because a lot of people have amazing content, amazing life stories, amazing teachings, and they don't have the courage to write it down and call it a book. But the process is fast, it's simple, and it's easy. And the reason why a lot of people don't write and finish their books is because they start self-editing as they're going through the writing process. They start doubting themselves. They talk to other people who might not share the same vision as them or who might not encourage them. So when you go into this writing arena, you have to remember a few things. Number one, your vision, your ideas, your book, your story is like a seed. It's like being pregnant and getting ready to have a baby. When you're pregnant, you make sure that you eat the right food, you drink lots of fluids, you walk, you exercise, you nurture your body so that you can incubate that baby, that idea, until it comes out into the world. You're very, very protective about yourself. And that's how you should be with this book that you're writing now. You have to protect your idea and be very selective with regards to who you share this information that you're writing a book. Talk to the people who will encourage you. And talk to people who've done it before. A lot of times people go for advice to people who've never written books, who will tell them that it's hard, it's impossible, they shouldn't do it. And they end up believing that and they stop. So be very, very selective as to who is around you, who's encouraging you as you go through this process of writing your book. So the other reason why people don't finish writing is because they have to sit down and pound a keyboard and type. And sometimes something happens. There's a disconnect between your hand and the keyboard, and your ideas don't flow very easily. For some people, it's very easy to transfer that information that way. But for me personally, I found that I'm more effective if I speak my content, if I speak my books. So there's no need to sit down and type. I'm currently working with another author. Her name is Shona. She's based here in New Zealand. And Shona's technique is to handwrite her book. She's literally finished handwriting a book by hand. And now we're busy getting it typed up. And that's what works for her. So it all depends on you, what works best for you. And I think because I'm a speaker, I'm used to hearing my own voice. I find that I articulate and put words together in such a beautiful way if I'm not overthinking it. If I try and sit down and type, it takes me a lot longer than when I'm just speaking. So you have to figure it out and work it out for yourself too. And just remember that if you're going to speak the book and you're not used to the sound of your own voice, it will sound a bit strange initially. It will feel icky. Forgive yourself for that. Trust that what you are doing will help you, and try it for at least 10 to 15 hours before you give up. I find that if I speak for an hour, I can generate 10 to 15 pages of text. So it's a really quick, fast process to get your story out and to get your information out as well. And your editors are there to help you clean it up, to get the grammar correct, and help you compact your story so that it's ready for publication. So we have to start with the end in mind. I ended up writing 8 books using this process. I always start with ebooks. So I have 2 printed books that are on Amazon, and I've just taken off all of my other ebooks on Kindle because I'm rewriting them and I'm going to publish them again on Amazon, this time as a hard copy. And these are some of my book covers. And so why do I start by creating my book covers first? I do this because I want to see where I'm going. They say that if you set a ship on a course in the sea without a destination, will it ever get there? The same applies to writing a book. Creating the front cover of your book is like seeing the goal, seeing the end result of your hard work. And what my program normally does is once I have our first initial conversation with you, we go straight into what does your book cover look like? And I help you with your personal branding. I help you with the branding for the book. If the book can be turned into a business, what I'm offering is not just a book writing course. It's how can you turn your book into a business? Because out of a book, it can be turned into a workshop where you give presentations to companies and organizations and individuals. Out of a book, you can get an ebook and you can get an audio book. Out of the same book, you can learn to sell the book in foreign languages. So you can write a book in English and then sell it in Japanese or Chinese or French or German. That is what's called selling the foreign rights of a book. You retain the intellectual property of the English version, and they pay you for the right to print that book in other languages. You get an average of 5 to 35,000 euro per language. So I take people's books to the Frankfurt Book Fair every year, and I help people sell their intellectual property, sell their books in foreign languages as well. You'll have to forgive me. My voice is a bit difficult today because I'm just getting over a cold. So what else can you get out of a book? It can be turned into a movie. I teach people how to write movie scripts. I'm actually currently working on a trilogy myself, which is based on my life story and my first book. You can also create things like cards, inspirational quotes that come out of your book that people can buy. You can create artifacts that go with the book. And by artifacts, I mean physical products. I have a friend who wrote an amazing children's book, and now we're working on the prototype for the doll that goes with the book. There is so many things that can come out of a book. I mean, if you watch movies these days, a lot of films make more money from the merchandising than from the film itself. I live here in Wellington, New Zealand. A lot of you all know about the movie Lord of the Rings. You know about Avatar. Those 2 films grossed more money from the artifacts, from the products that were produced after the films were made. But all of those things came out of a book first. It was a book before it became a screenplay, and then out of the screenplay, a whole lot of products were produced. So think very strategically about your book, and when I connect with you and we talk and I get an essence of what your book is about, I can then help guide you as to what else you can do with your content and your intellectual property and sell it in a different way. So when I help you with personal branding, by personal branding, I mean, as an author, you have to be careful that you do not get lost in a sea of authors. Self-publishing is a big business right now. People are self-publishing all over the world. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of authors. So what is going to make you stand out in that sea of authors? How are you going to show up in the world? Now, I modeled my personal branding strategy of one of my heroes. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, and I suggest you don't do the same. Take a look around you and see the people who are there, who inspire you, who are doing what you want to do. Buy their books if you can. Go and attend their workshops, their online programs. See how they've succeeded. There's a beautiful quote that says, "Success leaves clues." Successful people will always leave you clues on how to do it. I'm going to repeat that. Successful people always leave you clues on how to do it. They share their stories, their how-to stories. So if you go online right now on YouTube, we're living in this information age where you can literally find out anything you want to know about anyone who has a digital footprint. If you go onto YouTube and Google, "How did Steve Jobs succeed?" you will find videos, stories of his success. You will find him telling you his story of how he began to get to how he got to where he was. So my role model is Oprah. And when I started watching the Oprah show, it fascinated me how one individual person could reach millions of people and become a billionaire. And I have over the years watched and modeled off what she's done. I noticed that all of her magazines, every single magazine Oprah has ever published, has got her on the front page. Why is she on the book cover of every single magazine she's produced? It's because Oprah is the brand. Her persona, her face is the brand. If you say Oprah to anyone in the world, from Japan to China to New Zealand to Zimbabwe, people know who Oprah is. They know what she looks like. So I went ahead and did the same thing. So you can see in front of you some of my book covers, and my image appears on the front cover of every single book I've produced. So you can use the same strategy. And it's a great strategy if you want to take this book writing business and turn it into a speaking career. And that's what I have managed to do very successfully. I have turned my writing into a speaking career. And I travel all over the world, selling my books, selling my programs, teaching people what I do. They say that if you want to be an inspirational speaker or a motivational speaker, you have to give people a visual bite and you have to give them a sound bite. So the visual bite I give to people is my image on the front cover of my books. The sound bite is what they hear me say in the first 30 seconds of a presentation or a speech that I give. So if that's going to be your strategy, make sure that you get professional photographs taken. Invest in that. Get a photographer who knows how to take pictures of people's faces. Get a photographer who can capture the essence of your eyes and who you really are. So that if somebody's in a bookstore and they see the front cover of your book and they look into your eyes, they get a feel of who you are. And you will know when a good photograph is taken. And that's what I've done. So this is my first book here. Karen, you'll have to give me feedback whether you can see my cursor on the screen.
Yes, I can.
So Born on the Continent was my first book. And I picked this picture. I was 36 years old. I looked like I was 17. And I was feeling really good about self at that time of my life. And I created the cover myself. I went down to a print shop and printed out a fake book cover. And my oldest son was in high school at the time. He was about 16 years old. And he saw this book cover and he said to me, "Mom, it's nice, but there's something missing. There's just something missing." And he's really good with computers. So I gave him my computer. He went onto Photoshop and he worked all night, tried all kinds of ideas. And he didn't sleep that night. He was so excited that my book was coming out. And the next morning, he had recreated my book cover. He handed it to me, and initially I couldn't quite see it. And I'm not sure if it's showing very well in this video, but I will send you copies of my book cover. he put a very subtle watermark of the map of Africa over my face. It is so subtle, a lot of people miss it, but those who do catch it have emailed me. And sometimes you have to hold the book back to see it. And my son said to me, Mom, I feel as if Africa is tattooed on your soul. And I wanted to represent it in some way. And he is so right. He was so dead on with who I am as a person and how being African is something I'm very proud of. And so that became the book cover for my first book. I then went on to use the strategy of using my traditional African clothes in every single picture for every single book cover that I have. Now, why did I do that? I wanted to stand out. Remember how I said, you're going to be in a sea full of self-published authors. How are you going to show up? What is going to make you stand out? It's going to be how you look. It could be that you decide that your branding colors are red, yellow, and blue, and you decide to wear those colors every single time you show up. I wear my traditional African clothes when I give presentations and talks. And what I really wanted to try and do is to get people to say, I know this African woman, she's an amazing author, she's an inspirational speaker, and she lives in New Zealand. And that's what makes me stand out. So use your point of difference, no matter what it is, and I will help you along this process to develop your own brand identity. So start with the end in mind. Right now, I want you to think, what is my book cover going to look like? And again, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Go onto Amazon, go into Google, and Google books that inspire you. For example, you can type in Google memoirs by women, and those book covers will come up, and see what other women have done. And then model from that. See what the most successful women who've written memoirs have done, and follow in their footsteps to develop your own brand. What else can I tell you about book covers? So your book cover is really your real estate. It is the thing that draws people in. It's the first thing that they see. If you are going to use a logo, we can help you create a logo that resonates with the essence of who you are. I had one lady who has an affinity for hummingbirds, and we created an amazing logo of a hummingbird that now appears on all of her book covers in a very subtle way. Another woman that I know is into butterflies. It could be any symbol. So when you think of symbols and logos, think of brands like Nike. Nike's branding is so clear. Everybody in the world knows that tick sign. If you think of Apple, we all know what the Apple brand looks like. So it could be that you will use a symbol to stand out, and we will help you find a symbol that resonates with who you are as an author. The other way of branding yourself is through colors. So just the colors that you choose. I personally love vibrant colors. You will never see me wearing black unless I'm going to a funeral. So do the same thing. Choose those colors that resonate with you, that say who you are. If you're a conservative person, you're not likely to be seen wearing a bright yellow dress, but yellow is my favorite color, and I would be seen wearing a bright yellow dress. So I hope this is helping you guys think about where you're going with your books, think about how you're going to position yourself in the marketplace, and design the front cover of your book. And we will do a whole branding session for you personally. And out of that branding session, we create your book cover, we create your branding style guide, And that branding style guide is then a business document that is used to create your website, to create your business cards, all of your business stationery. It becomes part of your package of material that you're using for your business as well as an author. So I've just talked to you about branding and explained how I came upon my branding strategies. And I'm going to email all of you this presentation. So if you're not writing, don't worry about it, just listen. And you will get a free copy of this presentation as well in PDF format as an ebook. So I've talked about starting with the end in mind. What I normally do with all of the authors who come into my program is once we've created the cover of your book, we create a journal for you that is printed with that as the front cover of your book. And what I suggest you do is you keep that journal with you and you journalize this journey while you're writing. You show it to people and tell people, this is the book that I'm working on. This is what it will look like. You use that fake book to market and promote yourself and to pre-sell the book. When I work with authors, I encourage them to pre-sell 100 copies of their book while they're writing. You are going to find that the easy part of being an author is in the writing of the book. The challenge comes in how to sell. So when I started this program, I had 100 authors in 36 countries who all went through my program, and within the first 90 days, I had 78 people who published. And when they were finished, they all got stuck because they didn't know how to market and promote. They didn't know how to use social media. So now what I'm offering my authors in this program is to teach you how to use social media to sell, to teach you how to get free publicity, to teach you how to blog and get people to follow you through your blog. So blogging is so powerful. I teach you how to podcast your content so that people can listen to you online and subscribe to you as an author or as a coach or as a teacher. So you will get a free journal that will keep you motivated. And in that journal, there is a plan, a project management plan, where you commit to dates of when you want to get things finished. So if you came to me today and say to me, Getrude, I want to get this book done, I want to get it done in the next 40 hours, I will help you do that. If you say, I am married, I'm working full time, I've got kids, and I can only put in 3 hours a day, I will show you how to timeline it and get the book done based on the time that you have. And I always encourage people to be realistic about this. Don't set yourself goals where you will fail. Set goals that you can meet. Because when you fail to meet your own goals, you become demotivated, discouraged, and you don't meet those goals. So be realistic. When I wrote my first book, I was a married mother of 3 children under the age of 12. I had 3 companies that I was running, so I was working full time. And I found that I had to find a time in my day that I could dedicate to my writing with no distractions, where I was totally focused on the writing. And what happened was that I managed to carve out time at 2 a.m. in the morning. I would set my alarm. My kids would come from school. They would do their homework. We'd have dinner. They'd go to bed. We would sleep at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I would wake up at 2 a.m. every single day and start to write. I would sometimes write from 2 to 4 and then go back to sleep, wake up at 7, get my kids ready for school, or I would just stay awake until I've taken them to school. So you can do this as well. And what happens is when you keep showing up, sometimes I would show up in my office and I have no idea what I'm going to write. But each time I showed up, inspiration would come. I will share with you a video by Elizabeth Gilbert. She did an amazing TED Talk about creativity. And she talks about her writing process and how sometimes she has writer's block, she doesn't know what to do. And she says she goes into her office and she talks to her creative self. And she tells the genie in her that she's ready to write. And what it does is it helps you get out of your head and stop overthinking things. It helps you give the responsibility of writing to something that is outside of yourself. And what happens to me is I've actually found that I channel all of my books. I feel like I'm just a vessel that something is using to awaken the world through my words and through my writing. And when that thing takes over, I can't stop. And this is why I speak my books. Because when I speak, I'm not in my head. Something is just working through me. And it's such a magical process. I do encourage you, if you've never done this, to give it a try. So we will design your cover. You will wrap it around an old book and you will carry it with you, or you will get the journal so that you can show that to people. When my book was a work in progress, it's about 6 weeks before it was published, I read a book on how to get free publicity. And it involved, looking for free speaking engagements or going to a TV station and getting on TV to talk about your book. And I did this. I went to TVNZ. I literally walked into the TV station here in Wellington and told the lady at the reception that I needed to be on TV. I wanted to get on the Good Morning show. And she thought I was really crazy. And she said, we don't just get people coming off the street. We have researchers who look for interesting people and they get in touch with them. And I was like a dog with a bone that day. I wasn't going to leave until I could talk to somebody. So I said, can I talk to somebody in your research department? And she said, yes. So somebody came down and they sat with me and I told them about my story. And that weekend, the Dominion Post in Wellington had done a full-page write-up about me. I was featured in the authors section on the Dominion Post. And I had the cutting with me. And the guy I was talking to looked at me and he looked down on his desk, shuffled a few papers around, and he said, did you just walk off from the street? And I said, yes, I did. And he pulled out the same cutting of me in the Dominion Post in Wellington. So most of the people in these TV stations go through the Sunday papers and they look for interesting subjects to interview for the Good Morning show. And I got on the Good Morning show the next day. It was Mother's Day, which was another advantage. And I remember talking to this guy and telling him about my book. And at the end of the presentation, they asked me where the book was available. And I had a copy of my book in one bookstore here in Wellington called Paper Plus. And the owner of Paper Plus was from my Rotary Club, so he agreed just to take one copy. And so I just said the book is available on Paper Plus. But what happened is people all over New Zealand who watched that Good Morning show contacted Paper Plus in their cities. I got my book into 36 bookstores that day. And because it was cataloged by Paper Plus, all the other branches could pick it up. And then they went onto my website and they started ordering my book. So these are some of the techniques and tricks that I will be teaching you as we go through this book writing process. I actually have a whole workshop on how to get free publicity. I've done some amazing things. I got myself into 46 women's magazines worldwide 12 years ago when my book was published. So this is something else that I'll be teaching you to do as well. So you then keep that journal, that fake book by your computer, you carry it in your handbag, you see it every day, and it helps you literally, physically hold onto your vision. I promise you, you will work fast, you will work smart, and you will be so encouraged and inspired to finish writing your own book. So a few things I want you to remember when you go down the process of writing your book, whether it's a memoir, whether it's a book that teaches people something. Always remember that the most successful books are books that have stories in them. People remember stories. So if you have a message, wrap your message around a story. If you have clients who can agree for you to use their stories as case studies without naming them, use that in your book. The other thing I want you to remember is do not preach, show, don't tell. When you're trying to empower people, when you're trying to be a teacher, the best way to do it is not to preach down at people, but to show them how. And you can show them how by illustrating how to do it through a story. So you will learn how to speak your book into life. And in this workshop, I will show you how to write a book in 40 hours really fast. So the book title is the next thing we're going to do. Once you have decided on a book title, do some research. Go on to Amazon, go on to Google, and see if there are any books that are written with the same title. Unfortunately, you cannot copyright a title. So there are hundreds of books with the same titles all over the world. It doesn't matter. So don't be too precious about your book title or being scared that, oh, if I tell people my title, somebody will steal it. It doesn't matter. Share it. Do a survey. Use this group on Facebook. I now have the largest group on Facebook on how to write a book. There are over 6,000 people in this group. So post on the wall in the How to Write a Book in 40-Hour group and say to people, this is what my book title is. Tell them the synopsis of the book. Come up with 3 or 4 titles and do a survey and see which one people respond to the most, and then adjust it. And once you've decided on the book title, I suggest you go onto a website like GoDaddy and register the URL. Why am I telling you this? People remember titles of books. Particularly for someone like me, I have a foreign surname. I have a weird spelled first name. A lot of people cannot remember my name. They mistype my name. My name is Getrude, not Gertrude. So if anybody was hearing me speak, they would think I'm Getrude Matshe, and they always misspell my name and they can never find me that way. So the best thing that you can do is to register the URL, because if you're on a podcast or a TV show and you mention the title of your book, people will remember the title. They will forget your name. So you want to make sure that you've got the URL for it. If you can't find the URL, put the word book at the end. So register the domain. The next thing I want you to do is to register the domain for your own name. When I started writing, there was a man in London who heard me speak at a conference who thought I was going to be famous someday. And he went and registered the name Getrude Matshe for 10 years. It took me 10 years to get the URL with my name back. And he tried to sell it to me for $35,000. So there are people who buy URLs and sell them. It's a business. So if somebody sees the potential in you, they will buy the URL to your name and try and sell it to you. So what I did is I diarized the date that it was going to expire, because I found out who it was. I knew the expiry date. And when it expired, I went and grabbed it back. And because New Zealand is the first country to see the sun, I saw it before he woke up in London, and I registered my name for the next 10 years. So register your name. And if you can use an initial, like J.K. Rowling's, do what these successful people have done. That works as well if your name is common. So what is a subtitle? I talked about the title of your book not being as important as the subtitle. The subtitle are the words that describe what your book is about. So you can come up with a book title, Never Give Up or Live Hard. But because you want your target market, the people who will buy your book, to know what it's about, you wrap it in the subtitle, A Practical Guide to Overcoming Depression. So Never Give Up could be a book about never giving up on your goals, never giving up about being an actress, about being an athlete. But this book is about depression. So the keyword depression has to be in the subtitle. So if somebody goes on Google and is looking for books on depression, your book title will pop up. Does that make sense? Live Hard, how to feel the fear and do it anyway. So these are the things that you have to think about when you're crafting your book title and subtitle. This is the second book that I wrote. It was called It's Not About What Happens That Matters, and that was the presentation I gave at the bank, at ANZ Bank. And the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Overcoming Life's Challenges. And I literally told 10 stories. At the end of each story, I put a worksheet with questions that people can ask themselves if they're going through similar challenges. So people could actually write in the book as well. And that's how the second book was produced. Now, before I leave book titles and book covers, let me just go back to another strategy that can really help your book cover pop. And it's called disruptive marketing. I want you to Google an author by the name of Seth Godin. Seth Godin is a marketer. Fascinating man. If you've never heard of him, subscribe to his blog. Godin is spelled Godin, Seth Godin. His book cover strategy is disruptive marketing. He chooses book titles that are so quirky, they don't mean anything. They're so weird. One example is a book called The Purple Cow. And this book is purple, and on the front cover is a great big fat purple cow. He did it so that his book could stand out. Instead of printing the book horizontal, it's printed vertical. So again, it's a bit different. And it's a book about marketing. So what he was trying to illustrate to people is, how can you create a product that can stand out? The purple cow meant nothing. If you didn't know, if you Googled the purple cow, you wouldn't even know what the book was about, but the subtitle is all about marketing. So try and think about disruptive marketing in your strategy for your book title and book covers as well. So who is your target market? I've been talking to a few authors this week who are new, who are coming on board, and I try and help people identify who their target market is. And people will say to me, Getrude, my book is for everyone. I can tell you right now that no, it is not. There is a 33% rule in anything that you try and sell. 33% of people need your product and will love everything you put out. 33% of people will hate you. I don't even want to see you. 33% of people don't give a damn. They're just not interested. So don't kid yourself when you think that everybody needs your book. I can tell you now that no, they don't. And the narrower your target market is going to be, the more effective you are going to be as a writer. I want to repeat that. The more narrow your target market, the more effective you are going to be. I have just recently discovered that my best clients, the people that I love working with most, are women over the age of 50. I have just turned 50 myself. And for the last 15 years that I've been in the book coaching business, women over the age of 50 are inspired, they're motivated, they have life stories, they want to make a difference, they're at a transition in their lives where they're trying to find something else to do with themselves. So I now focus on women over the age of 50 when I'm marketing. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because if you're trying to talk to somebody who is the age of 25 to 45, the languaging is going to be different from a woman who is 50 to 60 years old. If you're going to try and write a book for teenagers, you're going to have to teach and speak in a language that teenagers will understand. So decide on the age of your target market and make sure when you start creating this content, you're taking that into consideration. So who is the book for? Is it for somebody who's getting over illness? Is it somebody who's tired of giving up on their dream? Is it somebody who's fearful and living with fear? Is it somebody who's suffering from depression and sadness, emotional instability? Is it men? Is it women? Is it a book for children, entrepreneurs? Be very, very clear who your target market is, and you will meet your goals. Okay, so I've talked about a few things here. Share personal stories if you can. They give you credibility when you talk about things you have been through yourself or things that you have achieved in. Wrap that story or that lesson in a nice, interesting story so they get the lesson. Illustrate it if you can visually, because some people are visual and they like to see diagrams. In my second book, I put at the back a flow chart so people can see a process that they can follow step by step to achieve that lesson. Use pictures and diagrams where possible because it really makes your book quite interactive and different. And make sure that it is a solution that is easy, simple, achievable, and practical as well. And keep it simple. Use the KISS principle. So you'll be learning how to write fiction. It's a whole different word on how to write fiction. I'm not going to go into detail on that now. I'll teach you how to write a memoir or an autobiography. I can teach you how to write poetry very, very fast in a very creative way. Until I learned this process, I used to say I'm not good at writing poetry. My poetry was inspired by events, by emotion, and I couldn't just sit down at my desk and write a poem. Now I can write 10, 15 poems a day, and I'm teaching people that process. And why I like poetry is because I use it on the front chapter of every chapter of my book. I start with a poem. So poetry is very powerful. So this is where our webinar is ending today. At this point, you will be ready to start writing your book. And I'm going to open up the floor to you, Karen, seeing as you're online. What has come up for you in this conversation that I can help you with? And I'm now getting a few questions in the group chat with a few other people who are asking questions. So Karen, let's start with you. What have you got out of this webinar the most? And what questions are coming up for you as you're thinking about your book going forwards?
Thank you, Getrude. It's very inspiring listening to you. I'm glad there is a process, that it's not just a download. I liked the fact that you were channeling because for my book, it's connected to my past, and so my great-grandmother is helping me, and I have her tea box with me, so I can actually feel her there, and so all of a sudden we have a team writing, so that's great.
That's how I'm writing my movie script, by the way. My movie is based on the AIDS pandemic in Africa. And my brother died of AIDS. So I channel him in when I'm writing my movie script. So it's a very, very powerful way. You're not alone. You're not alone. You have all of these giants on whose shoulders you stand on. Why don't you channel those in? Dr. Jan, thanks for joining us. I'll give you a few minutes in a second to introduce yourself. And Karen, I didn't ask you to introduce yourself, but please do that.
Hello, I'm Karen Humpage and live in New Zealand. I am working in the alternative health industry and have had I've had a few book ideas, and I actually thought I was going to be writing about another thing about posture and helping school children with posture, but I've actually got another book out, and so this is all about connecting with our past, our family traditional recipes, and making them more healthy to stop our families dying early with like diabetes and heart disease and things. So it's a bit of a quick
Fantastic. Yeah. So what questions came up for you, Karen, during this webinar?
I don't really need to make time now. I've actually got the diary out. I've taken an extra day off work for myself. So I'm actually having to now make time. What gets me excited is that we're coming into summer, and I love getting up early. So we've actually moved into a house that I'm looking into the morning sun now. So that's the inspiration, is to get up and start writing. So my question about that was, can I just do 1 hour a day, or does it have to be more than 1 hour?
Do whatever you can that's comfortable. Does that make sense? If an hour is what you can do an hour, but do it every day. It's when you show up consistently every day that makes a difference. Like I said, when I speak for an hour, I channel 10 to 15 pages of text. I can write a book in a week. That makes sense?
Yes.
So trust that. If it's an hour that you can make, stick to an hour. Because if you say 2 hours and you feel stressed out and you've got other things you're thinking about, you're not going to be fully there in that hour.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Jan, hey,
hi.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Fire away. Yes. And in case this recording stops, I will restart it. I'm just not sure how much time I have on Zoom. So fire away.
Great. No, well, I just got on my computer. I was doing some work, and then I saw that you were on. So I'm so sorry I missed it.
No. This is recorded. Everything I do is recorded, and you can watch it afterwards.
I will.
So, yeah, because I'm back now. You know, I've been away for a while with everything that's happened. Yeah, so I will record everything, and if you ever miss anything, you can watch it again, then email me your questions.
Okay,
That's how I'm going to be working with people. That's how I can work with 100 people at the same time in different countries. So I always choose 10 o'clock in New Zealand because it's daytime in New Zealand. It's evening in the UK. What time is it for you where you are? Where are you, on the East Coast?
No, I'm in the Midwest.
Okay, so what time do you have there?
So it's 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So I think you found for my time.
So this is for anybody who is living in Australasia. If you're going to do a webinar, 10 o'clock New Zealand time is a sweet spot. It's a really good time because right now it's 3 o'clock in LA. It's 8 p.m. in Los Angeles. It's 11 p.m. in London, but we started almost an hour ago, so it should have been 10. It's 8 o'clock in Australia. It's a really sweet spot to run a webinar.
Okay.
So please just tell people what your book is about, because I know you published, and thank you for my copy. I got it when I got home.
Okay.
Read it. I'm inspired, and I know you're now at that point where you want to start marketing and promoting, correct?
Definitely. Well, my book is called The Secrets to How Not to Throw Mama from the Train. and,
Awesome.
and it's about how to navigate that challenging relationship, if you have it one, with your mom or with your adult daughter.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
It's been doing pretty well. I won first place in the APS Book Awards for nonfiction this year, and
Wow.
so it's doing pretty well. And I've been able to, through my workshops, help a lot of women and their daughters through the challenges that they're having in their relationships. It's all about communication. That's what I tell them. It's the way we
It's about communication. You're so right. Thank you for sharing that. So since you published, tell me what has been the biggest challenge you found in trying to sell, especially selling in volumes?
That is the big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to share about what I've been doing mostly is through Amazon and through book fairs and different book selling sites. And it's just really kind of difficult to, people tell you that they're very interested in your book, and but to get them to buy it, so it's the marketing.
Okay.
That's bottom line.
Yeah, and that's why I decided with my program to wrap the marketing into helping people sell.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can write the book.
Right.
The challenge always comes in, how do I sell? How do I leverage off the internet? I mean, we're living in an information age right now,
Mm-hmm.
where everything is at your fingertips. So thank you. I'll be catching up with you now that I'm home. We'll schedule a time maybe tomorrow where we can catch up and I'll give you some ideas. I'm now working with a team out of Los Angeles who are helping with setting up all of your social media, tying things up in a coherent way, showing you how to use Facebook advertising and marketing and stuff like that. So I'll introduce you to a couple of my friends that I'm working with in LA who are helping all of my authors as well.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
So I want to answer a few questions that came in through the chat, somebody who couldn't come online. And it's a woman that I've been working with this week who's writing a very, very emotional story of sexual abuse. And when I started working with her, she said to me, Getrude, I'm not really good at writing myself, but I have this powerful story. I just don't know how to put the words together. And one thing people might not be aware of is that I'm a ghostwriter. So I ghostwrite memoirs and nonfiction books. I'm not good with fiction. So if anybody out there has a story that they want to tell and they need help in putting it all together, I can ghostwrite your book for you as well. So I interview people telling the story, and I listen to their voice as I am going through the writing process. So if anybody out there has a memoir that needs to be written, I can write it for you. And what happens, and people weep when they read their own books because they don't realize that I write in their voice. I have them in my head as I'm writing. So every single person, the way we speak, the way we articulate through speech comes through in writing. And so if I record you telling me your story and have to write the story, I can play you in my head. There's one woman from the South, she's from New Orleans, and I'm African. But Miss Rosemary has got such a magical way of stringing her words and her phrases. And of course, after spending hours, I think we did almost 100 hours with her telling me her story, I eventually wrote her book. And when she called me, she was in tears because she could hear herself in the book. So I just want to put that out there to people that sometimes don't do it the hard way. If you're struggling, get help. I can help you by ghostwriting as well. Then the other thing that happened with another client of mine who's just sent a message, she's now stuck. She's also writing a very sad book. Again, unfortunately, around sexual abuse. It seems to be a big issue. And with what's happening in the United States right now, I can understand why women are so in front of this, what's going on in the US Senate. But I told her to stop writing because she was going back and reliving the pain of her experiences. So this is my message to anybody who's writing a very, very personal story that can affect them emotionally. Use the writing process to heal. Writing is powerful as a healing aid. I look at writing as a way to go back into those wounds, those spiritual wounds, and attend to them. A lot of times we think we've gotten over trauma, but we haven't. And what we do is we hold it in, we put a Band-Aid over it, and we just go on with our lives. And we don't actually realize that it's still there and it's festering just under the surface. You're still feeling it. And then when you start telling somebody or talking about writing a book, it all comes up because it's always been there. Does that make sense? So the best thing to do is to make sure that you allow yourself the time to heal, but don't get stuck in the pain again. Tell yourself you're going into this wound and there is pus and it needs to be tended to. You need to put something on it so that you can get rid of the wound. And you will find that if you go in and just be with it for a while, you can come out of that chapter. You can come out of that book and close that chapter in your life and move on. So I've been working with a lot of veterans. Anybody out there is a veteran. One of the first lady who's made this aware to me was an American war veteran who I worked with in my very first group. And she had post-traumatic stress disorder. And she decided to write about it. And by the time we were finished with her book, she was healed and she started a coaching business in the US, coaching other war veterans to use writing to heal. So writing, storytelling is a powerful way to get things out of your system, to heal spiritual wounds. So I'm just telling you guys this because I work with a lot of nonfiction authors. Use it to heal yourself. And ladies, if there's anything that comes up as I'm speaking, just jump in there. Another issue that was raised last week was a young woman who's from Africa. I'm trying to inspire African women to write and have their stories be heard. And she didn't have money to pay for my services. And my coach, my mentor, is based in LA. I was having a conversation with him this morning. And he said to me, Getrude, if anybody ever tells you that they don't have money, you have to remember that it's not about the money. The money is always there. There's something else that's in the way that's holding them back. And when I took on this coach, I was broke. I had come out of my divorce with absolutely nothing. I had lost a property business that was worth $4.5 million. I had congestive heart failure. I was sick. And I felt that I couldn't do it on my own. And I had always been an amazing manifester. I could pull things out of a hat. I've always been good with creating money, but for like 2 years, I was stuck in the sadness of what used to be my life and trying to rebuild myself. And this coach charged $5,000 a month for his services. In my previous life, I would have been able to afford it in a heartbeat, but at that time, I couldn't afford it. And so I said, Chris, I can't afford you. And he said, no, that's just a story. Can you manifest the money to be able to afford me? And I was quiet for a while. And I said, I used to know how to do that. And he said again, can you manifest the money? And I said, yes, I can. And I tell you, literally within it wasn't even 3 hours. I had somebody who approached me who wanted a small book, ghostwritten at $5,000. And I was able to pay for the first month. I paid for the second, the third, and the fourth. So if you are holding back because you do not have money, there's something else in your life that's going on that's causing the block. What is that? Because money is an energy. Money flows through us. And when you are in the flow of abundance, you have to be clear energetically, clear to attract the right people who will help you, clear to attract the opportunities you're looking for, clear to attract the money that you're trying to create. The money is always there. Another really good example of this in my own personal life is when I started working on my first screenplay. So I'm writing a story about the AIDS pandemic, and I started by making it a goal. In my first book, I wrote my own obituary. I wrote down everything I was going to achieve in this life until I died. One of those things was that I wanted to start a foundation that would help children affected by the AIDS pandemic in Africa. I wrote that I wanted to make a difference in women's lives and get to speak in the United Nations. I wrote down that I wanted to be the first African person to write, direct, and produce an Oscar award-winning screenplay. And then I wrote my own obituary as the last chapter of my first book. So if you buy my first book, and I'll send you a link on how you can get it, that's what I did. Read the last chapter first. And when people read the book, they thought I was crazy. They knew I was alive. And the last chapter is talking about my being dead in 2067, where I die at the age of 100. And everything I wrote down has come true. I started a foundation that is helping children affected by AIDS in Africa. I started writing my screenplay. I attracted in my life filmmakers like Peter Jackson here in New Zealand, his wife, who won an Oscar for the script for Lord of the Rings. I attracted Denzel Washington, who's going to act as my ex-husband in my first film. All of these people showed up that year in the most magical ways. So I have a workshop that I combine with everything I do called the Visioneering Toolbox. So you remember when I was talking about the book cover and creating the front cover of the book first? If you can see where you're going, if you can paint the picture of what it looks like, you will achieve it. So when I mentor and coach people in business who want to start a business or who want to be authors, the first thing I'll ask you is, how much do you want to make with this book? I want an exact figure. Is it $10,000 in the first year? Is it 100,000? Is it 1 million? They're just numbers. One of the things I was taught when I became a millionaire before I lost it was that $1 million is a one with a few extra zeros next to it. And I had a dream of my grandmother once who said, if you have a problem, break it up into small pieces. Karen, you were talking about how you're guided by your gran. I'm the same. She had died 10 years before this. I was trying to start my first company in New Zealand. I'm an artist and I had painted the most beautiful fabric, like big 3-meter pieces of fabric, and trying to sell the fabric, and the fabric would not sell. And everybody who looked at my fabric would say, it's beautiful, but can you paint ferns? The fern is the national flower or plant of New Zealand. I was painting fish and zebras and giraffes and African animals and trying to sell an African product here, and it wasn't working. And I was struggling. I had 100 meters of fabric to sell. And then I had this dream, and it was my grandmother. And in the dream, she said, Gertrude, if you have a problem, break it up into small pieces. At 2 a.m., the dream made no sense. When I woke up, I realized what the dream meant. And I got my scissors and cut the fabric into small pieces. And I started making cushions. I sold 1,000 cushions at $25 a piece in my first 3 months of business. I created a website. I started exporting these cushions all over the world. And so I apply that principle to everything I do in business. So as new authors, as people who are going into this world, I want you to tell me how much you want to make in your first financial year. And I will show you how to make it. We will set goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, and we will hold you accountable to those goals so you meet that target. So be realistic as well in terms of how much. Don't go and over project so you get disappointed. It's the same thing with setting the time when you're doing your writing. Don't commit to 6 hours if you can only do 1 hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another question that I just got now from another lady is, Getrude, I don't feel like my story is unique. Who would want to read my book? They say that the richest places in the world are graveyards. Do you want to know why? They are full of people who had amazing stories, who had wonderful ideas, who did not have the courage to write it down on a piece of paper because they thought, who would want to read my book? My story is not unique. It's not going to make a difference. People go to their graves with their stories. So what I say to people is that everything you have gone through in your life, every challenge, you were challenged so you could be a teacher. So you could empower somebody else who's going through the same struggle and show them how you got out of it, how you succeeded. So don't belittle your story. Don't belittle your experiences. You went through it so you could teach. Like Jan, right now, you have based your book on a life story. The struggle of caring for your mom. How many women are doing that right now and not knowing how to get through to the end? You went through the struggle so you could be a teacher, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, you have a niche right now in the United States. The United States has got a large elderly population.
Yes.
Who are needing caregivers. How do you empower that caregiver? Because one of the things I saw from your book, Jan, is that it's not just a book for mothers and daughters. This is a book for anybody who's caring for an elderly person. Because the caregiver normally gets so worn out and so tired, and if they don't take care of themselves, they can't care for the person they're caring for.
That's correct.
So imagine running workshops in retirement homes, in rest homes, and getting the rest home to buy the book for their staff before they start working for them.
Never thought of that.
There you go. Imagine if it became part of their orientation that if they're bringing in a new group of staff, Dr. Jan comes in and you sit down with people and you empower them with these tools that they need to do their jobs effectively. So there's another little manifestation, right? So in sharing what your book is about with other people, I can show you something you're not seeing. That's why people get a coach, because I can show you where your blinkers are. You are so set in, I've written a book, it's about mothers and their daughters and caregiver, whoever's looking after their moms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say, Jan, look to the left. There's a whole industry of elderly people over here. And now a whole world has opened up, has it not?
Definitely.
How exciting is that?
Extremely.
So that's what I've been getting from a lot of people this week as I talk to all my new authors. They start doubting themselves. They think their stories aren't relevant. They can't come up with the money. And I will show you how to come up with the money. If you just say, yes, Getrude, I'm committed. I want to do this. I will show you how to do it. So that's where we're going to end today's webinar, unless you two ladies have got anything else you want to add.
No, I'm going to listen to the recording so I can get it from the beginning.
Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. It's been a real pleasure catching up with you. Thank you for tuning in.
And congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you. Yay, I'm getting married. Thank you, Jan. And Karen, contact me when you're ready. I'm here.
Yeah.
We'll
All right.
schedule a
Thank
time.
you.
We can start with 1 hour where we really just sit down and brainstorm so I get a full idea of what it is you're doing. I'm not just bringing to the table how to write a book. I'm bringing in the business side of me.
Yeah.
The 18 years of my being in business.
That's
I'm
good.
bringing in the IT side of me. A lot of people don't know that my first profession was in IT. I was a COBOL programmer, a web designer. I know how to use social media. I know how to use the internet to sell. So that's something else you'll be getting from me. You'll also get from me the speaking side, how to be a powerful, inspirational speaker who can get a message across. So I have a book that's coming out called Speaking from the Heart, where again, I'm teaching people not to use PowerPoint when they speak. They disconnect from their audiences. There's ways of communicating without tools and aids. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will post this on YouTube and send you the link. And if anybody out there wants to learn how to write a book, get in touch with me. My name is Getrude Matshe, spelled Getrude. Just remember the name is misspelled. There's an R missing at gmail.com. Get in touch with me. It will be a pleasure for me to bring on a few more people. I need 100 people for the next group. We're up to about 78 right now. So if you ladies know anybody else who would like to learn how to write a book, please add them to the Facebook group, introduce them to me directly through the inbox on Facebook, and I'll contact them. It's also nice to have a writing buddy or somebody else who's working on a book, who's living in your town, Karen, who can hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So think about that. You might have a friend who's, at a loose end, who might want to write a children's book for her grandchildren. Bring them on board. That way I can help both of you together.
Okay.
All right, ladies. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.